Hello everybody and welcome to this Rangers Review special, a book review no less. I'm delighted to say we're joined by Alistair Aird to talk about his latest Rangers book, In Safe Hands, looking back on the history of Rangers goalkeepers. It is a fantastic read, so I'm delighted we've got Alistair on. How are we doing, Alistair?
Not too bad, not too bad. Obviously hoping that we've got an announcement coming in the next few days just to kind of put the uncertainty to bed once and for all and stop all the debates. But yeah, other than that, all good.
Yeah, before we talk about the book then, Alistair, I mean, we're recording this on Thursday afternoon. If you get any preference who you'd like to see, I mean, Kevin Muscat and Philip Clement seem to be the favourites to take over.
What? I don't have a preference from the two. Obviously, both have got a decent record in terms of success that they've both achieved in their managerial career. I think what tips it for Muscat for me is he's been around the club, albeit for a short period as a player. He knows what the club's about. So for me, that would favour Muscat. But ultimately, it's about getting the right appointment this time. I think we've had certainly the Michael Beale appointment looked on paper to be progressive. I think a lot of people felt he had a significant influence under Steven Gerrard. It just didn't work out, and we're in a position now where we absolutely have to get this right. We can't have this state of flux where we're changing the manager every 6 months, 12 months. So we need to get it bang on. So I think a bit of credit maybe that we are taking our time and we're not just reacting to this and getting something done. So hopefully come 21st October when we play Hibs, we do so under a new manager.
Yeah, totally agree. Right, let's talk about the book then. Before we do that, Alistair, maybe if people that are tuning in maybe unfamiliar with your good self, where did the love of Rangers come from? And you've written a number of Rangers books. Where did the love of writing come from?
The love of Rangers was cemented, believe it or not. I was doing my homework one night. We played Dundee United in the semi-final League Cup 86-87. And the next night I was sitting at the kitchen table doing my homework. My dad came in and he slapped down in the kitchen table the programme for the League Cup semi-final. I think Davy Cooper was in the front and Kevin Gallagher, and it was gifted to me by the janitor at the school my dad worked at, and from there that in itself that started the programme collection, which became a Rangers news collection, which became a Rangers book collection. And then I started going to games probably kind of regularly after that. And then it came a point where I'd kind of developed a decent working knowledge of the history of the club, and just started to kind of sit at the computer one night and type away, and found that things flowed and things came together. And then I sent stuff out, just put some feelers out to publishers, and the McCoy's biography got taken on, and then from there, there's a wee bit of a gap, and then I picked stuff up again. And probably the latter few books have been particularly good. Obviously, the challenging times we found under COVID in terms of mental health in particular. I find writing very cathartic. It's nice. It's a nice way to kind of give me a wee bit of a release from the pressures of work in particular. So that has then spawned a few books in the last few years as well, culminating in the most recent one on the goalkeepers.
Yeah, you must have a warehouse if you're collecting programmes and Rangers news from all the way back from the 80s, Alistair.
I'm permitted one bookcase in the dining room, and the rest of the stuff is in a cupboard in the living room. I used to pride myself in it being in some sort of semblance of order, but it's probably needing a wee bit of time invested in it just to get it back and kind of categorised as it should be. But yeah, it's nice to have a wee dip in and out every now and again, and I much prefer the kind of contemporary accounts as well, just to kind of do that wee bit of a dig and just find some more stuff out about us, because we've got such a wonderful history, Derek. That, there's never anything you find out that's anything other than really uplifting about us.
Yeah. So this latest book then, Alistair, looking back on the club's goalkeepers up to Alan McGregor, pretty much up to the present day. What was the idea and the thinking behind writing this book?
Well, we've always been blessed, I think, with some very, very good goalkeepers in our history. I mean, in the time that I've sort of followed Rangers, I'm 45, so you're talking kind of early to mid 80s that I'm starting to get kind of serious about the club. And in that time frame, we have been very, very fortunate. If you start with the likes of Chris Woods, 1986, through to Andy Gorham and Even like Charbonnier when he comes in.
Yeah.
Charbonnier is one of the top 10 goalkeepers in the world when he signs for the club. Stephen Kloss, Alan McGregor, you mentioned as well. We have been very, very fortunate. I thought, well, if I've been kind of fortunate in my lifetime, having done some reading on Scott Simon's teams for the 60s, the Jock Wallace treble winning teams with Peter McCloy and Stuart Kennedy, I kind of had a feeling that we did, that our recruitment of goalkeepers had been particularly good throughout. So I wanted to go further back, and I just started to go back through the years, got to World War II. I thought, well, we'll keep going, and eventually it spawned into a project that took us right the way back to the founding fathers. And it has shown that as much as initially there was a bit of a kind of state of flux in terms of the goalkeeping position at the club, once things started to settle down, we have been very, 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 very fortunate throughout our history with the custodians that we've had in that time.
Yeah, certainly have been. I love it. Like you say, it looks back to the very beginning and a number of interesting characters that have kept goal for Rangers during the 150 odd years in existence. But in terms of the work that went into the final copy and the research and what have you, Alistair, was it a considerable amount of time?
Well, again, thanks to my bookcase and cupboard full of stuff, I had a lot of stuff in the house, so it was kind of on tap, if you like. But when you start to go back sort of 40s, 50s, and then start further back than that, then finding that information is a wee more difficult. So I was reliant on the archives for the Glasgow Herald and the Evening Times in particular, and some of the early club histories. So the John Allen trilogy I relied on quite heavily, and Willie Allison's New Era, which I think was out in 1966. So they had a lot of information, and it allowed me then to kind of scratch the surface of some of the goalkeepers that were kind of less well known. And once you start getting names and start realising where they came from, that kind of spawned another bit of the book that I thought it'd be kind of remiss of me just to focus on a Rangers career. So I tried where possible to look at their sort of route to Rangers, and then each goalkeeper's career after Rangers as well. And in the early days, if you look at some of the lineups are incomplete. So I'm not going to sit here and say that it's all singing, all dancing. It covers absolutely every single goalkeeper that's represented the club, but that's largely because there are gaps in lineups there. But where there's been lineups available, I have tried where possible to at least make mention to each and every goalkeeper that's played for the club. Yeah,
it's really interesting. One such name I wanted to bring up that sort of surprised me is an Austrian lad, Karol Pikarna, came over, first European player in the UK, didn't play for Rangers much, but we snippets like that, Alistair, did you sort of come across these little surprises when you're researching and writing it?
Yeah, the club actually went on tour, and Pikarna played in one of the games against us. I think, if memory serves me right, he conceded 9 goals, but he really impressed the club's hierarchy. Got him across in a trial, had a couple of games in trial, impressed enough to be offered a contract, but I think homesickness got the better of him. The interesting thing for me about Pikarna was the fact that he then went on to Bayern Munich. And there's been such a huge connection between Rangers and Bayern Munich over the years when you think about the Cup Winners' Cup semi-final 72, the Cup Winners' Cup final in 67, Champions League games as well. So to have that early link between the two clubs was something that I found quite interesting.
Yeah, of course, the debate rages as who is the greatest Rangers goalkeeper, and Andy Gorham and Alan McGregor certainly the two guys you think of in that debate, Alistair. But looking back, some of the goalkeepers through the ages, like Herbert Lorck played a number of games for the club. Bobby Brown was a legend in his own right as well, wasn't there? There's so many players back then in the olden days, if you like, that represented Rangers with great distinction.
Yeah, I think that's debates like these are always subjective because information on the careers of the likes of Willie Robb and the likes of Herbert Locke that you mentioned there, who was the first Englishman that the club signed. Even Bobby Brown to an extent, who Bobby Brown came in and took over from Jerry Dawson, who arguably is another that he's played over 500 games for the club, deserves to be mentioned, well decorated as well. He deserves to be mentioned, the greatest ever goalkeepers. But unfortunately, when it comes to that debate, there's not many people around now that saw them in action. But there's not the same amount of footage, there's not the same amount of statistical information, statistical data on these goalkeepers. So you're kind of reliant on, well, these guys have played 300, 400, 500 games for the club. George Niven's another one, 400 games for the club. But unfortunately, if you take George Niven, for example, he is best remembered probably for the fact that he was the goalkeeper in the 7-1 game against Celtic in the League Cup final, which is unfortunate for him. But again, he's played over 400 games for the club. He was part of that sort of early Scott Simon era. Then you've got Billy Ritchie as well, another one that doesn't really get mentioned in the debate. But the one for me, and I was fortunate enough to get a bit of time and speak to him, that doesn't really figure when it comes to discussions in greatest ever Rangers goalkeeper is Peter McCloy. 16 years at the club, 1970 to 1986, over 600 games. Nobody's played more in goal for Rangers than Peter McCloy. And the unique thing that Peter McCloy holds over any other goalkeeper in our history is he's the only goalkeeper to win a European medal. But he's very, very rarely mentioned. And he survived over his 16 years at Rangers a number of significant challenges to his position or to his status as the Rangers' #1 goalkeeper. You had Stuart Kennedy, who unfortunately his career was kind of compromised by the 5-1 defeat at Wembley in 1975. But Stuart Kennedy was a challenger to him, so off that challenge. Then in the early 80s, there was Jim Stewart come in. Jim Stewart had been at the World Cup with Scotland in 1974, so again had a track record. Nicky Walker come in. Loads of goalkeepers, or a number of goalkeepers that had challenged Peter McCloy, but as I say, he's never really mentioned in the debate. He doesn't figure. He might figure in the top 10, but he certainly doesn't figure in the top 5 when people talk about it. But the names you mentioned earlier, I think when it comes to the debate, certainly in the modern era, it's very, very difficult to look beyond Gorham and McGregor.
Yeah, I'll get your feeling on who you think is the greatest shortly. But speaking to these guys, you said there you spoke to Peter McCloy, spoke to Alan, a number of others as well, didn't you, Alistair? How valuable was that in terms of writing the book?
I think the personal insight's key. You can, when you're doing a project such as this, and some of the feedback I've received, understandably so, is that the early parts are quite dry because it is just reliant on either contemporary reports in the newspapers or club histories and whatever, and it does become played this game, made this number of appearances, whatever, and you might find a wee pearl of wisdom here and there. But when you actually get to speak to the guys and get to ask them questions about what it was like in the inner sanctum, what it was like to be a Rangers goalkeeper, the unique pressures that are associated with being a Rangers goalkeeper, that's the kind of thing that really brings things to life for me. And it allows you to then create more of a story or give more of an insight. And that's what a book like this should really do. And I was very, very fortunate that through the books that I've done previously, I was able to reach out and get a number of leading lights, none more so than Alan McGregor. The time spent with Alan McGregor was very illuminating. He was very open. He was very honest, and everyone I spoke to was of a similar ilk. But the common thread that ran through every single chat that I had, every single interview that I conducted, was the unique and immense sense of pride that these guys had to have played for the club. And that shines through, and the unique nature of the position, the fact that you need that focus and you need to be on your toes for 90 minutes because you might have nothing to do, and then all of a sudden we're 1-0 up with a couple of minutes to go. Somebody hits a shot for 25 yards and you're called upon, and that's the difference maker. And that was one thing that kind of came across, that was made very clear very early to the goalkeeper, that at Rangers it's a unique position. It's not like a normal goalkeeping position or play as a goalkeeper for another club. But yeah, just that sense of pride. And as I say, for the book, it certainly made it, I think, a more complete work, having got that or got those personal insights. Yeah,
I mean, it covers everyone, even guys that only played a handful at times for the club as well. And just when you're saying about pressure and what it means to play for the club, Andy Dibble springs to mind, Alistair. When he came in, if you remember that time against Celtic, that effectively won 9 in a row, and the effect that Rangers had on him just shows you how immense and significant the club is on players.
Yeah, I don't think there'll be many goalkeepers in our history that have been pitched into arguably the most important game in our history, because Celtic were getting a bit of momentum at that time. I think they'd beaten us a couple of weeks earlier in the Scottish Cup. They'd beaten us 2-0 at Parkhead. Gorham had played in that game, but he was ruled out, and I think Walter was then in a dilemma. I think he had Theo Snelders available, but for whatever reason Theo wasn't available for selection, so he was looking at Michael Ray, who was one of the young goalkeepers at the time, and Walter was in that position where it was either Michael Ray or emergency loan, and he reached out and managed to get Andy Dibble in, and Andy Dibble acquitted himself very, very well in the 7 games that he played for the club. But despite only having played 7 games, he's got an indelible mark on his body now. I believe he went to Canada with Messrs McCoist and Durrant in close season, and having spoken to Ali on a number of occasions, I think these post-season trips weren't exactly the most quietest of trips. So he ended up one night just being encouraged to get a tattoo to mark his time at Rangers so he could have something to remember us by. I don't think Andy, having spoken to Andy, I don't think he needed that tattoo to remember us by. I think despite that short period of time, the significance of that period of time that he was at the club, I think it was always going to stay with him.
Yeah, he's a great guy. So the debate, if you to choose one, Alistair, McGregor or Gorham, I think longevity-wise, McGregor edges it for me, but Gorham, especially, I think that 92-93 season, for a couple of seasons, really, I don't think anyone touched them pretty much in the world, perhaps Peter Schmeichel, but those two were absolutely magnificent, really.
That's what edges it for me, just what you said there about Gorham and Schmeichel and whatever. Both of them world-class.
Yeah. Both
of them making significant contributions in title-winning seasons, cup wins and all that kind of stuff. Longevity wins it for McGregor. Success tips the scales for Gorham because he won more trophies. But McGregor, with the greatest respect to Alan McGregor, he's never been mentioned in his time as being one of the best in the world. Gorham was. Yeah. Gorham was probably up there with Schmeichel, as you said, top 2, top 3 goalkeepers in the world at that time. But that's not to diminish any of Alan McGregor's achievements. I think 55, as much as we had a significant gap between ourselves and Celtic at the end, there were key interventions during that season that made by Alan McGregor that people probably forget about now because they remember Morelos' goals, they remember Tavernier's contribution, Jermaine Defoe's contribution. But McGregor made saves during that 55 season that, again, were in that world-class bracket. But Gorham and there's not a lot in it, Gorham just edges it for me.
Yeah, and of course, he's retired at the end of last season, but the jury very much out on several of Rangers' summer signings, but not so on Jack Butland. Alistair, it seems like we've found another gem here.
Yeah, every inch of Rangers goalkeeper, on and off the park as far as I'm concerned. He conducts himself very, very well. He's very vocal on the pitch. You can see that. I mean, obviously, Alan in particular was very, very vocal. And you can see already that Jack Butland, and the ironic thing, having talked earlier about the uniqueness of the position, the focus that you have to have as a Rangers goalkeeper, Jack Butland in the spell he's had at the club's probably been overworked in comparison to some of his some of his predecessors. But the vast majority of stuff that he's been called upon to do, he has done, and he has done very, very well. He's come into he's come into what has transpired to be a team very much. I used the term state of flux earlier. We are in a state of flux, but he has stuck out. He has come across very well. He's conducted himself very, very well. And when the new manager comes in, I think Jack Butland is a central figure. And the ironic thing when we talk about Jack Butland is the last person I spoke to for the book was Robbie McCrory. And Robbie's come in on a couple of occasions for us now and acquitted himself very, very well. And at the time when I was speaking to Robbie, before we'd signed Jack Butland, it looked as if he was probably going to get an opportunity to stake a claim for the number 1 jersey. But I think Jack Butland's come in and performed so well that, understandably, the rotation of the goalkeeper, playing Jack Butland in the league games and the European ties and Robbie in the cup ties, is something that the manager, and he's been kind of roundly criticised for a lot of his decisions. I think that's a decision that he's got spot on, because Jack has done so well in the position that he deserves to retain the gloves. He deserves to stay in the team. But to have that good, solid backup in Robbie to call upon, I think again puts us in a good position. But probably one of the few positions at the club just now where we're quite well blessed with the options that we have.
Yeah, totally agree with that. If people want to buy the book, Alistair, where can they find it?
Usual retailers. I've also got my own personal Facebook page. They can contact me through that, and I've got a Facebook page called Aird Books. So if they want to message on that, I'm trying manfully to get some events set up as well over the next few weeks and months, and hopefully get some support for that, where we can potentially get some signed copies and whatever done as well. But very much looking at that. But yeah, if people want to get in touch, then they can do so. And hopefully they enjoy reading it as much as I enjoyed writing it.
Yeah, we'll stick in the links in the description box, folks. Any books in the pipeline as well, Alistair? Are you hanging up your pencil at this moment in time, or have you ideas of more publications?
Plethora of ideas and a number of very interesting opportunities. But I'm keeping things going. I'm doing so, obviously, as you know, I'm doing the stuff with Mark for Follow, which I thoroughly enjoy doing. Getting the opportunity to go into the gantry and do that kind of stuff every other Saturday is a fantastic opportunity, and that keeps me ticking over. I'm obviously doing some articles for that as well. There's some opportunities for articles for other magazines, but books will always be there for me. There will always be that sort of desire to sort of grow my own library, if you like, my own personal library. So it's kind of pointed out for Facebook pages for the Goalies book. Keep your eye on the Facebook pages. There might be some things coming soon, but the one that is on the horizon, which is done, which is due out in November, slightly different. This one I worked with David McKinnon, who played Rangers in the 1980s. Worked with David in his book, which is called Slide Tackles and Boardroom Battles. It was more of a kind of editorial side this time, but David's feedback has been such that my involvement kind of helped kind of elevate that to a higher level or to a higher level, such that he was very pleased with the final product. So that's due out in November. But yeah, there's hanging laptops or hanging pens, pencils, or whatever up. Nah, that's not in the cards. That's not going to happen. As I said earlier, I derive such a huge buzz and a huge benefit from doing anything associated with Rangers. There's people out there that say it's an obsession. I'd rather sort of go down the road of passion. It's something I'm very, very passionate about. So yeah, there will certainly be lots more to come going forward.
Fantastic stuff. Well, we wish you all the best with your latest book in safe hands. It's been great having you on, Alistair, and hopefully you've all enjoyed that, folks. If you want to buy a copy, as I mentioned, the all important links in the description below. Bye for now.